Hi, I'm Tree and this is Stitchless TV. Now, today on Stitchless TV, I'm going to show you how to make a very, very simple short sleeve men's shirt. Now for the shirt today, you can use the McCalls 2149 sewing pattern. It's a very easy men's Hawaiian style shirt. Now the one that we're doing today is for quite a special person actually. It's for this guy called Stuart Gilchrist, who's he's a little bit more than a yoga instructor. Go and look him up. And he's actually Shaz's husband. So he's got quite a kind of quirky taste in fashion. So for his Hawaiian shirt today, I'm mixing up a bit of kind of tartany seersucker fabric, because he is actually from Glasgow. And he does like floral fabric. So I've got this kind of floral cotton seersucker fabric, and I'm hoping to put them together in a kind of clashy type of way. Now we do have a little bit of a problem, and that's I can't find my buttonhole for my Genome machine, but hopefully we'll find it before the end of the show. When you've cut out all of your pattern pieces, I've kind of adapted a few things because I've got this contrast facing, but when you've cut out all your pattern pieces, I do want you to stabilise your front facing, which for you will be attached, and what else did we do? Oh, and the collar as well. So I want you to iron some sort of interfacing onto the collar and the front facing of your top. For me, with sewing, prepping, it's absolutely key to making your sewing projects easy, because the more you press and stabilise fabrics, the easier it really is to sew. So an example of this is I'm going to prepare this pocket, which is going to go on the chest of the shirt. So I know I've already done it, but I'm still going to show you. So with this pocket, okay, in advance of sewing, I'm going to start folding down all the seam allowances. So first of all, I fold down the large piece that will have a line stitched across it on the top, and then I start folding in all the little seam allowances. Now I'm just going to sew this across here with a straight stitch, and then I'm going to show you a little trick. So when it's done, it's just like that. Now for your pattern, you'll have marked on the shirt where your pocket is going to go, but because I have to do this pattern placement, I don't need to mark mine because I have to match up the flowers anyway. So when you think it is pretty much in the position that it should be, just get some Bonder web strips. So I buy it on a roll or by the meter, and then I cut it really thin. Okay, so that's like about 2 mils. And then stick it in position underneath. Make sure your iron doesn't go on it though. Right, if I'm definitely happy with the position of that, and then I'm just gonna iron it into place with without squashing too much of my seersucker fabric. And you don't need to do all of it, but do enough so you can be confident that you can just go in and sew. But don't get it on your iron. Now, I don't know if I need to tell you this, but you know what? Don't put it across there, or you can't get into your pocket. Now, we're going to sew up these pockets, and I might just show that to you. Right, when we start sewing these pockets, our starting position is not the top of the pocket, it's where that little line of stitching is. So, kind of roughly get it in position. Put my needle in. I'm going to go backwards and forwards a little bit. And then I'm just going to come up sort of more or less to what the seam allowance was on the other side. Put my needle in. Go across the top. Just a couple of stitches, not too many. Probably 2 stitches actually. And then I can start sewing around the pocket about 1 millimetre in. Just take your time because you want to sort of do it quite nicely. And then at each corner, put your needle in and just work your way around. So I don't know if you can see that because it's so camouflaged. So then we end up with that pocket. I do look forward to seeing my contrast stuff. Okay, so the next thing that I think we should deal with is the burrito yoke. Now, if you've added a little box pleat to go at the centre back, it's a good idea to do a little stay stitch there now to hold it in place. Right, so me having a contrast is going to help you today actually. So you should have 2 bits of yoke, okay? So whichever one you want to go on the outside, put it right sides together with the back piece of your fabric. So right side yoke, right side back piece. Now I always do centre notches, so I'm lining up my centre notch. And then put your other piece of your yoke wrong sides together with the back piece of your fabric. So effectively, I think what we've created is a sort of sandwich of the back piece, yeah? So look, so that's my yoke, and that's my yoke, right sides together with the fabric. My centre notches are all lined up, because I want to make sure that they're all okay. And then either sew it all in one shot, or sew from the centre out, and then turn it over and from the centre out to the side seam. So sticking to the seam allowance that they tell you to do on the pattern, make sure all your seams are lined up, and you're just going to sew using a straight stitch. So keep going until you get to the end. So then it looks like this. You then get one of your front pieces and you've got to put the shoulder bits right sides together with just your back yokes. Okay, so we're letting our inside yoke hang down. So you're just putting it together just with the outer yoke bit at the back. And you're going to line up that shoulder seam and stitch it across, and do the same on the other side as well. Once again, when you do this, make sure you stick to the seam allowance that is on the pattern. Right, so this is what you end up with. Alright, so this is the back of the shirt, that's the yoke. For me it's contrasted. and we attached the front shoulder bits on, didn't we? But if I turn it over, you see that we did attach this, but we haven't bagged it out here. So this is when you do what people call the burrito yoke method. Right, so this is the inside. This is the inside of our shirt. Okay, so we're going to flop it over. So we end up being on the outside of the shirt. So we end up being on the right side, the outside of the shirt. And then we do this thing where we have to roll up our fabric into a burrito shape. So it does make sense, doesn't it? So look, it's a long roll. So that's the back piece all rolled up. And then we should really roll up this, but I don't think there's any need to. I just need to access this bit here. So I'm going to get that a little bit out of the way. Okay, but we do need it all flat. And then what we have to do is we have to bring our fabric, the shoulder of the yoke, to meet the inside shoulder of the front. Okay, and then we just stitch along that line and then do the same on the other side as well. So I'm carefully holding my burrito yoke. I am going to move my arm in a minute. Now what I normally do in advance, because it is easy to kind of lose track of where you've got to go. So before I do this burrito bagging out method, I notch, make sure I know where the fabric has to match up. Now I've got a sort of pleated fabric as well, so it's even more difficult. So just stitch along wherever you think the seam allowance is. I know you think you should be doing it on the other side, and you probably should, but I think you'll see it better if I sew it on this side for now. So just make sure everything all lines up properly with the same seam allowance. Right. Now before we look at that, let's do the other one as well. Now when you do this, you do sort of think, oh my goodness, surely this is just a complete mess. But if you push everything through the neck, hopefully it will all be fine. So just push all of the fronts, both fronts, and that rolled up back piece. I'm just pulling it all through the neck, and it's really not difficult at all. And then look, so I've just got to give it a shake. So it's just a way of nicely finishing off the shoulders on the outside, which we could do easily, but to finish them off nicely on the inside as well. I'm a terrible one for spending ages looking at what I've got so far and deciding if my design choices are good for the next stage. And I think they are. I mean, it is quite an odd combination, but I think it will suit him. Now what you need to do is you need to press those seams from the yoke, and then if you want you can top stitch them. I haven't decided what I'm doing, but that's more of a decorative design choice. So coming along nicely, I decided not to top stitch the yoke because I quite like it looking all clean looking at the moment. So now we're going to do the collar. What we have to do is we've got to put our fabric right sides together. Now the curved bit is the bit that will get attached to the actual shirt. So what we need to do is we need to sew. I need 3 hands. We need to sew half a centimetre seam allowance coming up there, going all the way round and down the other side. and then turn it the right way round and give it a good old press. Right, so I'm going to start over here. I'm going to use the width of the sewing foot as my seam allowance, because I think that probably is about ½ centimetre. So just come straight up, oh, maybe a bit too far, needle in, swivel it around. So we're not sewing on that curved side, we're sewing along this sort of straightish side. And make sure everything all lines up. Use pins if you want. And then now I think I didn't cut my fabric properly because it was difficult to cut, it's all crinkly. So I'm going to go by the stiffened collar side and come down and then backwards and forwards. I'll just trim off this as if it didn't happen. To your corners and press the right way round. Right, so that's all beautifully pressed. Now this is actually going to be our top side on our shirt. But before we do anything, I want to know where the middle is. So just fold it over. We have actually got a notch there, but I want to clear a notch. So now that's ready to be attached to the shirt, and it's really easy to do. Okay, so this is the neck of our shirt, and these are the facings, which are sort of all in one on your pattern, but I've done this contrast thing. What you're basically going to be doing is you're going to be attaching this collar onto here, going all the way around like that. But before we do that, I like to just stitch a kind of stay stitch, that if I need to ease a little bit, I can just ease a tiny bit, just in case this isn't perfectly fitting, because I have got this tricky seersucker slightly pleated fabric. So I'm just going to stitch about ½ centimetre away from the edge, going all the way around the neck, but stopping about an inch away from my front facing. So look, I've not really gathered it at all, but it's just there, just in case I need to sort of ease it a little bit. Now you're going to take your collar and lay it on, and I like to start at the centre back, and then by eye I'm just going to have a little look and see where it finishes, and I think it finishes in about the right place. So I'm going to start sewing that on, but I'm going to start at the centre back and go to the edge, and then start on the other side and go to the edge. My seam allowance is actually a bit more like a small centimetre, I suppose. Anyway, I'm not going to go backwards and forwards in case I make a mistake, but I am going to stick to a centimetre seam allowance and make my stitches smaller. So I'm not pulling anything, I'm just letting it feed around the bend. Now I could snip into that as I go around the bend, but I think we're doing okay with our centimetre seam allowance. Now when you get to the end, just backwards and forwards. Now you've got to do the other side as well, again from the centre, but because we like to have our fabric to the left, we flop everything over and we're going to sew it that way round now. Now before you do anything else, make sure that the distance from where you've stopped with your collar from the edge of the front facing is the same on each side. Okay, now if it is the same on each side, before we start snipping into the collar or putting the facing on, we're going to start to do some overlocking. Now there are many ways to finish off this, okay, but we're just going to do an overlock stitch that's going to go across there, and whilst we're at it, we're going to overlock a few other edges as well. Right, first of all, I'm going to overlock along the back of the neck collar. I'm going to make sure I haven't got any fabric trapped underneath, because then that's a disaster. And I'm not going right to the edge. I'm about maybe 2 inches away from the edge, because that gets covered up with the facing. I've trimmed back my collar a little bit, even though the overlocker does trim. And I'm just going to overlock that edge that will be seen at the back. Now you could finish this off with bias binding, that would be nice. Okay, so we end up with that. But before we do anything else, I may as well overlock my front facing edges as well. This is what happens next, okay? You've got to fold back your facing, so exactly fold back your facing down the line of where it's supposed to fold. And then what you're going to do is you're going to line everything up on here and stitch the same distance away as you did when you put your collar on, but you're going to start here, go backwards and forwards, come along, follow it around whilst attaching this on. But when you get to where it is in line with the shoulder, just fold back that little bit like that. Okay, just so that when you turn it the right way round, it's nicely finished off. So you can see where I've started, yeah? And it's going to be that the facing edge touches the edge of this collar, backs and forwards a little bit, and then I just follow the curve line of where I stitched the collar on, okay? But when we get to here, I'm just going to fold it away in line with the collar, but maybe not that much. So it will look nice on the other side. We do either need to trim it back or snip in. I think I'm just going to snip into the curve, otherwise it won't curve. And then the other thing you need to do, so that goes all the way up, yeah? You have to just mitre the edge just a little bit there, where it's the edge of the collar. Turn it the right way round so you can have a look. So when that's pressed, that'll be fine. So see how neat it is when it's pressed. Pressing is so important. Now that other bit on the other side, see that? I would just put a little tack there to hold it down. And the overlocked edge, you only see that bit there, but I do understand if you want to put bias binding on there. So do the same on the other side as well. Well, we're doing quite well. So this is what we've got so far. We've got a bit of good pattern matching at the front and contrasting yoke and collar. Now the reason why I've put this sort of really clashy tartan dark fabric and darker stitching, because I'm trying to bring down the flowers, because it is for Stuart, and whilst he does like wearing pink and flowers, he does wear it in this sort of, you know, masculine way, if that's possible. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a really easy way to insert a sleeve in a 2D way rather than a 3D way. Very easy. Now, I don't know if any of you have done this before. I have shown it in lots of other videos. But basically, when you need to insert a sleeve, you don't always have to close the side seams, close, you know, your sleeve and then fit it into the hole. You can do it this way, and I think it's a lot easier for beginners. But you have to make sure that you have your centered notch Pay attention to your 2 notches being at the back, 1 notch at the front. And in this situation, our shoulder seam is not there. Our shoulder point, it's actually there where the notch is. So if you stick to these rules, you'll find it easy. Now, if we did have a very shaped head, we would still do that thing where you do like the stay stitch with a large stitch and you gather it and you ease it into the sleeve head. But I don't think I need to do that for this. So I'm flipping it over, so I've got the fabric right size together. Again, I'm going to start in the middle point, what I think is a middle point, and I've got my notches there, and I'm basically just going to stitch the sleeve on, matching it up as I go until I end up at the side seam, and then I do the same on the other side. Now you can pin it if you want, but it's not always necessary. Starting where I think the shoulder, the shoulder seam is, not the shoulder seam, the shoulder point, and I've matched up my notches where the sleeve shoulder point is, if you know what I mean. And I'm doing the sleeve allowance that they say, and I'm just gently letting the fabric work its way around the sleeve head. Sorry if my arm is now again, I've got this crinkly fabric, which is a bit weird, and then making sure that everything all fits. So what you've got to make sure is that your fabric underneath isn't all bunched up, yeah? Okay, so when you've done that side, then you start at that same point, but remember we have to flip things over. All right, now, yeah, actually, in an ideal world, it probably is better to sew it from the other side, really, because it's easier to ease it in, but let's see how we get on. So I'm just over sewing there where we were before, and same seam allowance. Lining up notches. Right, so let's just quickly show you that. So look, why would you not do that? It's so good. Look at that. So do the same on the other side as well, and then give it a good press. So look, that is looking really lovely. Look at it. Right, so what I did do is I overlocked around the armhole. That's the point to do that. Now, all you have to do is you just turn it inside out. Right, all I've done is just turn it inside out and then put your seams together, and if they're overlocked, you can go straight down there and straight down here. So I'm starting at the armpit, the side seams being overlocked, the edges. I could have actually done that all in one shot. So I'm starting in the armpit, but about 1 inch away, because I like to over sew my armpits. I'm lining everything up, and I'm just going to come around the armpit and down to the hem of the sleeve. So go back to where you started, but I want to over sew that a little bit. so. I do that because I think armpits are like a stress point, aren't they? So I'm going to come down the side seam. But on this shirt I am going to have quite a big hem like that, but I want like a little slits at the side, so I'm going to stop about there. So we are nearly done, and it's starting to feel a bit Dolce & Gabbana to me. I'm going to show you some stuff. So overlocked inside, and I've started pressing up the seams ready for the slit. Okay, so it's all overlocked in there as well. Now I might not show you how to hem the shirt, but I'll show you this. Fold back, what you do is you fold back your hem, and then you fold back your facing, and then you would stitch the hem of your shirt. Okay, so it looks like that. Now I am going to show you this. I'm going to show you how I hemmed the sleeve. Now you wouldn't, or maybe you would, you probably wouldn't have a contrasting facing like that. It would just be all in one, okay, and you'd hem it up. Now we can take, on most machines you can take the plate off the machine, so you can use the sleeve arm of the machine, but that wasn't actually what I was going to show you. What I am going to show you is that very often when I sew hems, I feel where the hem is, and I sew it on the top side because I think it's easier to do, and you can feel where the hemline is. Now I pressed back a tiny little hem, so I end up with a nice edge there, just in case he decides to turn this up. So I'm not going to go backwards and forwards. I'm feeling where I'm going, and I'm hoping you can see. And I basically just go all the way around until I come back to where I started, and then go backwards and forwards. But if you do it this way, you'll find that the material doesn't bunch up and you don't get a twisted hem or anything. So, unfortunately, I can't find my buttonhole foot anywhere. So I'm going to have to do another little tutorial, which wouldn't be a bad thing, on how easy buttonholes can be when you have a buttonhole foot. But hemming, you can hem, can't you? Because we've run out of time. Hopefully I'll get Stuart to do some great photos in interesting poses whilst wearing a fantastic men's Hawaiian shirt, sort of. Thank you so much for watching. See you again very soon. Follow me on Instagram or Facebook if you want to see more pictures of Stuart wearing this shirt. See you again very soon. Bye.